What you have before you tonight is a resolution that has been discussed over the past couple of weeks by the City Council. The mayor approached the Council President, Council Vice President about considering a resolution reiterating and affirming the welcoming nature of Moscow as a community, and that resolution loosely based on a resolution that was considered and passed by the Boise City Council in a similar vein. In putting the resolution together, it was discussed at committee. The things that were taken into account were the previous actions of the City Council, in particular, and I think very descriptive of the welcoming nature of Moscow is Title 10, Chapter 19 of our City Code, titled Non-Discrimination in Employment and Housing Practices, an ordinance that was considered and passed in 2006 and then amended in 2013. This ordinance prohibits discrimination on any prohibited classification, gender identity, so on and so forth, to make sure that citizens in Moscow were treated equally, no matter what their orientations or their race, creed, etc. So based upon that, we crafted the resolution to look at that, look at the diversity of the community, the proclamations by the City Council and the Mayor over the years in support of diversity and in support of the University of Idaho and the various student programs, so on and so forth. So based upon that, Your Honor, you have before you a draft resolution, again, that was considered by both committees of the City Council, and we were directed to bring that resolution before Council tonight for consideration.
Okay, and there's a paragraph in here that I want to read to folks, and even though this is not a public hearing, I am going to take public testimony on this for those folks that want to speak to us tonight. And this is kind of it in a nutshell, that the City of Moscow is committed to being a friendly and diverse city where all residents feel welcomed, safe, and able to fully participate in and contribute to our city's economic and social life. And we urge all residents of Moscow to do their part in reaching out and welcoming all those who live and visit in our community. We are a diverse community. We are a diverse city. We can be a force, in my view, as a leadership role for the state of Idaho for what we're doing here. This is exactly what we are and who we are right now. And so with me and staff did a great job of putting this together. This was something that I asked for a number of weeks ago. This hasn't been something that has just propped up the last couple of weeks. And so I'm excited to discuss this and talk about it because, well, we all love this committee. So with that, I'd like to, Gary, listen to some of the folks here and see what they have to say about it. And
thank you, Your Honor.
Have them come up and introduce themselves, tell us who they are, and talk for a few minutes. Let us know what you think. Come on up, Joanne.
Good evening. I'm Joanne Manita, 203 South Howard. First of all, I can't say I couldn't be more proud of our mayor and our city council for considering a resolution affirming our welcoming and friendliness. I was sorry that I've been ill, and I didn't know if you took testimony at the committee's hearing before this or not, but I had a few suggestions, if I could pass this out. I know some people like to have it right in front of them.
Thanks, Joanne.
Thanks, Joanne.
Please. Thank you, Joanne. Could we have one for the city clerk as well for the official record?
I got some extra ones here too, Joanne. You gave me two if you want to need another one.
My reason in proposing this is just to slightly strengthen the three of the things that are involved. One is the safety and legal protection of everyone, whether or not they're citizens. And we're seeing these days the spread of fear and uncertainty, which no one should have to live with, and especially not in our friendly community. And I think incorporating these words in the first phrase would strengthen that part of the commitment of the city. And the second part, I know we don't want to be a sanctuary city, but I do think we want to point out that we're not going to use local resources to investigate or detain people unless it is federally required, not requested. So those are my suggestions, and hopefully you can consider them. But I do, as I say, applaud the thought and the intent of having this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
Oh, I want to mention something that we've received all kinds of emails and different information from various folks throughout our community on this. I just wanted to share that as well.
Victoria Seaver, 121 North Lily, Moscow. When people are oppressed or in duress and seeking refuge, or even simply trying to get a chance to better their lives, the proper response is to welcome them with what we can, to act with kindness, and to offer hope and inclusiveness. If America is the great and powerful nation it proclaims itself to be to the whole world, then it is strong enough, it is fair enough, and it is open enough to reach out its hand and heart to others. It is not only our police and military and officials who protect and serve all people within our communities, but we, too, the citizens in a society who stand on the behalf of others. We cannot expect either law or legislation to guarantee absolutely to eliminate any threat or to somehow enforce a zero-risk existence for us. It's just not realistic in any context. Compassion is a surer and saner path than reactionary fear that would resort to discrimination or persecution. So I applaud the mayor and the city council for extending this welcome and for having the solid faith in our community that this resolution affirms. We choose to extend a hand in friendship and to build mutually beneficial relationships with those who would come to our city. Some of the first words we teach our children are please, thank you, and you're welcome. Please pass this resolution with pride and substance. Thank you for initiating it and carrying it forward. And to those who would grace our home here, you are welcome.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Well said.
Hi, my name is Kate Evans. I live at 117 South Monroe Street. I just joined the faculty of the University of Idaho College of Law to teach immigration law and direct the
Well,
immigration
welcome to
clinic.
our community.
Thank you. I've greatly enjoyed it so far. I apologize for my voice, but I was late to the game on this, but really excited to see the council moving forward and in line with everything that I understand Moscow to be right now. I just wanted to talk about the number of students that are coming to my office and the number of emails that I'm getting from professors, staff, students concerned about the environment right now and their exposure. Which, you know, is detracting from their experience at the school and teaching. I've also had a great working relationship with the court system so far and the city attorneys who do a wonderful job of highlighting issues associated with immigration in the criminal justice system. And so I think many of the things that are going on are good to continue. And I would just reinforce the fact that a statement that is specifically directed to individuals regardless of citizenship, I think, is a very welcome one right now, especially since Moscow police have the arrest and detaining responsibilities on the University of Idaho. And so that a restriction on the use of county or on city facilities to detain individuals based on federal civil immigration violations in excess of what would be required under Idaho state law for an Idaho violation would be a wonderful addition to this resolution, and in line actually with the bill that was just introduced in the House legislature as well, to make clear that there's no obligation on law enforcement to hold or detain a person beyond what is warranted by the probable cause found for the violation of laws under the state of Idaho, rather than detaining people at the request on a civil violation.
Thank you. Ms. Evans, would you come up? We've got one counselor that'd like to ask you a question. Kevin?
Sure.
To bring up the piece that we've been talking about this for a while. And Gary mentioned, it's Chapter 10, Section 19 in the code. And
In our city code.
In our city
Okay.
code. In this part, and I wish we could bring this up, because it's D, E, and F. And it's under the police regulation piece.
Okay.
Okay, so the code already addresses what's being asked, which is no obligation on law enforcement. And the code reads that in F, that people are protected. It says the prohibitions against discriminatory acts as provided for in this chapter are intended to supplement state and federal civil rights laws and regulations prohibiting discrimination in the areas of employment, public accommodations, and housing. Therefore, this chapter shall not apply to complaints alleging to discrimination based on or prescribed under state and federal law. And it talks about, color, religious creed, ancestry, and stuff. So the protection that's being requested, to me, in trying to understand this, is already stated in our code. No, it's
well,
not.
One of the things that we looked at, and Gary might be able to explain this a little bit better, but when we came up with this resolution, we've already got a discrimination ordinance in our code here in Moscow. And so when we came up with a resolution, we didn't feel like it was necessary to restate all those things. Gary, would you like to elaborate on that for a moment?
Yeah, again, the charge that staff was given was to look at our past practices and things that we've done, things that have been passed by the city council that evidence the council's commitment to fair treatment, so on and so forth. And the code section they have before you is a great reflection of that. Looking at the discussions that had occurred back when this ordinance was passed had to do with pretty far-reaching discussion about everything from gender identity to religion, so on and so forth. And the common theme that ran through it was that that was not going to be tolerated in Moscow, that the council wanted to make a statement that as far as housing, employment, access to public facilities, that the council wanted to make sure that there was no discrimination that was going to be brooked by the city council, with respect to the individual rights of folks as well. And the council felt that it went as far as it could at that time to encourage that sort of diversity and anti-discrimination. So what we were instructed to do and what we did was to look at ways to put into a resolution the welcoming nature of the city with its policies and in light of the diversity of the community. So that's what we did.
And to remind us all just exactly what we are and who we are, we want people to be able to prosper with whatever it is that they do lawfully in our town, and get along with each other and make this community vibrant like it is and continue to be vibrant, whether it's now or 10 years from now or 50 years from now. And that's the whole goal behind this.
Yeah, and I guess in response to the Councilwoman's question, I don't read that section as being directly controlling the detention policies of the police department. And so the way that this arises, although I don't think it's common practice, but it's, I think, maybe an increasingly common practice going forward, at least in other jurisdictions, is for there to be requests to hold individuals for 48 hours based on alleged federal civil violations that would exceed any detention that would be required as a result of a violation of Idaho state law. And so that was what this language, that was what the Joanne's strengthening suggestion goes to, is the notion that the city resources would not be dedicated to detaining individuals in Moscow for additional periods of time based only on allegations of federal civil violations.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Reese, is okay.
What's that?
Can I ask a question again?
Sure, you can ask another question.
Is that okay? Okay. So it has to do with this part right here. Is like, so this has been the police part that we're grappling with, which had to do with whether or not they are citizens, right? That's the phrasing that's wanting to be added to the resolution that we've been discussing. And what we're trying to do as a municipality is maintain what we can do as a municipality in terms of enforcement or non-enforcement.
So I think that it looks to me as though there were sort of two areas of potential suggestions for additions, which is the first paragraph, which was the addition of the citizens or not citizens piece of things. I think that whether or not that says citizens or non-citizens may matter for, how it is taken by individuals in the community. Where I see the actual implications in the experience that individuals have is in that last paragraph, and the suggestion there of making clear that city resources will not be dedicated to detaining individuals based or investigating federal civil violations.
That's when we get into this, I'm going to ask the two lawyers over there, and I don't want to get into a legal briefing other than one thing I want to make very clear to everybody is that we want a town to prosper, and how we prosper is welcoming basically anybody that can get here that wants to work and prosper and be productive in what they do. And that's what we're looking at. It's a human right that we look at. That's how I see it. Now, I'm clearly not an attorney, but I would be extremely disappointed if we had a bunch of officers zooming around this town just looking for whoever looks different than the rest of us, whatever that may mean. Now, but I made this statement, if you drive through town 50 miles an hour, we don't care who you are. We're going to stop you and give you a ticket. Rod,
well, I can address some of that. Our law enforcement has never went around and did a stop and asked to see somebody's papers without lawful cause. The only time they ever ask somebody for their identification is if they can articulate that a reasonable suspicion of a crime has been committed. They don't go up there and say, "You look different, I need to see the papers." And I don't think we would ever allow that to happen. There would be no reason for that. When somebody does get arrested for a lawful reason and they do end up in the jail system, usually they get their fingerprints rolled at that point, and the FBI, or actually the ICE, would take a hit on that, and then they make a request to the court to hold them. That's usually how somebody gets caught up in the system here. But our law enforcement does not go voluntarily look for somebody who may be here illegally to detain them to see what their status is.
Yeah, and that detention piece at the request of ICE is what the suggestion is getting to, is that's typically how individuals, based on some interaction with police, end up a call is made to request that that individual is held, and held only based on federal civil violations rather than Idaho state law violations.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. I'd
Thank
like
you.
to hear from other folks out there that would like to come up and speak to us as well.
David Pierce, 716 East F Street. I thought about writing something to deal with this, but listening to what we've already said, I couldn't have written what I want to say. Because what's already been said makes me realize some other things. We don't need this resolution. The city of Moscow does not need this resolution. Latah County probably does not need this resolution, although it might. Who needs this resolution is our legislators and 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C. We are telling the world that we believe in equality. That's what's important in the long run. We're one of all these other sets of people who are saying what's happening is wrong. And we want you to know that we feel that way too. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Pearson, and you know, the important thing about this, and it's one of the things I stated earlier when we started talking about this, we want to set a leadership role. We get it here in Moscow. You're absolutely right. And do we need this resolution? It could be yes or no, but the thing of it is we need to remind ourselves and remind others if we're going to lead the charge on this thing, and we can get it done. So thank you for those comments. Here comes Dr. Pierce again.
And I didn't say the piece that I wanted in there, but I'm glad we did it. I don't need it, but I'm glad we did it because it tells the world.
Yeah. Thank you again. Interesting times we're living in, isn't it, folks? Others like to come up and speak? John, you had...
I would, at this point, I don't see anybody else moving up to the microphone. I would...
John, can I make a question before you do that, if I may?
Hang on a second. Walter?
Gary?
Sir.
We had a typo-corrected, I guess, resolution passed out to us.
Yes, it was just removal of a couple of commas, some
Okay.
simple
I just want to
punctuation.
make sure which one we might be making some kind of a motion on or not. However, this one is the one that was before committees. The one in tonight's packet had a couple of words added, I think possibly by Art in administrative.
Yep.
The one you passed out doesn't have "and visitors" in it.
Right you are.
If that's the case, I apologize for that. Let's go back to
Just want to
the,
make sure we know what we're dealing with here.
okay. So if you look at the one in the packet, and in the paragraph following, now therefore be it resolved, in the second line of that paragraph where it starts, and visitors feel welcomed, comma, safe, comma, and able to fully participate in, comma, that is one of the commas that would be deleted, and contribute to, comma, that is the second comma that would be deleted, and the balance of the one that was in your packet would be the same.
You also deleted "and visitors" in the one on the paper as opposed to what's on the packet.
Yeah, he was just reading from the packet.
Yep.
Right,
I was.
right.
So can we just say ditch the two commas but then leave it as?
Yes, exactly. That's what, thank you
Okay.
for
Right.
cutting to the chase. That's
And
what I
the
meant to do.
visitors are very important. Okay. So, John?
I would move that we pass this resolution in its amended form. Other than that, as it is written.
Okay.
Second.
Okay.
So just to be clear, what appears in the packet with the two commas removed as
Yes.
opposed to what's on the piece of paper.
The motion was to approve the resolution that was in the packet, less the two commas.
Indeed.
I was terrible at grammar.
Terrible.
I was the
Okay.
comma remover.
And-
That was my email, sorry.
Got a teacher here that's helping me out. And- Okay, I'll start the roll with Walter.
Aye. Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. Thank you very much, folks. This is an important thing for us. And yes, we are very much, this is Moscow, this is Latah County. But boy, we need to spread the word out there too, don't we? We got a few out there that, well, I can't say what I write, David, because it wouldn't be quite right, and it wouldn't be good in the newspaper for me to say what I think, come bluntly about it, but we'll move. Without it, you know what, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. It's 9 o'clock. Let's recess for 5 minutes, so we got a bathroom break, and then we'll come back.